we we this industry is way behind compared to industries like the game industry and the web industry. So there are billions of dollars getting thrown into concepts like Unreal and concepts like CSS and React and the delivery of services via your smartphone, right? There's so many more web developers in the world than there are architectural designers. And that's hence why, like, the explanation of CSS last week and the week before seemed almost like a no-brainer, right? But it's not something that I have seen anywhere internationally in the architectural design realm, which is just, it's astonishing that it's such a staple bread and butter thing in one industry, and it's not even thought of from the other. And I think it's the people have kind of forgotten about what modernism is in architecture. That like, you guys have learnt about modernism, right? Nicole's taught you about it.
Very briefly, we start a little bit later on.
Sure. So there is this major factor in modernism, which is that interdisciplinary thought is just as important as historical thought. So if you were to go back to the Renaissance and look at artists there, they learnt, and architecture is very much attached to art. Artists basically learnt by repainting works done by masters. So the people before us were godlike, and for us to become good, we have to try to aspire to be like the gods. And we will paint what the gods have painted, and by doing that, there's slight, small, little mutations in their work, and you end up with new art styles emerging. And then suddenly you hit modernism in art and architecture, and that is like saying, hang on a moment, there's actually some value in psychology and marketing, and you end up with the tomato soup picture, right? Hang on a moment, there's some value in science and material sciences, and you end up with all the like LED lighting and like art and all of those types of arts. And you can see that same pattern in architecture. There has to be a better understanding of the material world and the way that thermodynamics works, and suddenly all the old, this is just how it's done, a veranda goes like this because this is how it's done, has a reason to it, and that's because of the sun and etc, etc, etc. And function takes more precedence over form, and we can learn from other practices. And I think that's been forgotten, or at least that the world thinks that the internet is not something, it's not necessarily as important as what maybe some of the younger people think. You guys a lot of people used to refer to the internet as like not real. Like, oh, in real life this happened, and on the internet this happened. And that's not the case, right? The internet's just as much the real world as it is like walking around outside. And we're seeing that happen in politics, and we're seeing that also happen in like like, you guys probably spend more time with your friends online than you do in person, right? I'm making that assumption. But yeah, it's having a big impact on our world, and people my age and people older than me, and not referring to forward thinkers like Hank, they're not fast enough to catch up. So, and Hank mentioned that sort of exponential growth. It's going, something somewhere is going to break, because humans aren't going to be able to keep up with it. And who knows, we might already be in that point where it's breaking.
With the CSS program, if you think about how much architects traditionally are not really interested in developing the tools that enable them to do their design job. If you think historically, you're not interested in becoming a pencil manufacturer in order to do some sketching.
You have to become the master of the pencil, though.
The master of the pencil, exactly. So there's also no money then to invest into the tools a lot. So if you build an architecture firm to invest the money in new programming ways and programming standards and standards of how you would all do things together, nobody really has an interest. The interest is just saying, I've got an idea, and somehow that idea needs to be built. And in between that, I need to document it somewhere by introduction or explaining to a builder. In web, where everything needs to work together, because if you do something differently, you cannot work with the other one, and it just doesn't really refer to you. Everything is layered and interlocked with each other. There's by far bigger drive to develop the software, develop the tools, develop the standard of working together, because otherwise it will collapse. It probably also helps that it happened so quickly with a few companies so large so quickly that they could establish standards where in architecture you have unconnected millions of firms that all just walk the same kind of pace, completely unaware of each other towards a future.
Well, there's always the fallback in architecture that the thing that is going to be interpreting the information you provide is a human, right? So we're always producing drawings, right? Even though we're producing models, and those models are basically hyper complex databases with interconnected elements, the outcome is almost always a drawing that is printed off and given to someone to use, to interpret, to then put the building together. And we are slowly seeing the people receiving that instead actually wanting to receive a model rather than receiving a drawing. But there's always the fallback on, okay, we can just rely on the fact that a human is going to interpret this. So we don't need to worry too much about our digital standard, because as long as a human can look at this and interpret it, we're fine. And that doesn't happen in the internet realm. When I send a package of information from one website to another, that package is not going to be interpreted by a human. It's going to be interpreted by a software, right? And that's going to then deserialize it to then present to a layperson like us, right? So information is constantly getting passed between different programs, and that's where this standard has to come up. And that's exactly why CSS has been defined in a way that every browser follows, because if a browser didn't follow it, then it wouldn't be rendering the websites the way that they've been designed. So,
and I think when you think about designing a website and designing a drawing, conventionally it's both 2D, so there's actually no difference between the design of a website and the design of a drawing.
There is, but yeah, keep going.
But then if you would think about designing anything that's 3D represented, the only kind of thing that's different is the third dimension. And because you could, or you can program a third dimension into that as well, or a CSS program would take a third dimension, because suddenly on the browser you also got 3D elements that you can navigate around. You've got the design of the building in the web, and then to bring it out of the web into fabrication. So if you look into human fabrication where a bricklayer lays the brick on top of each other, well then you probably need to give them different sorts of information that a human can understand. But if you feed them straight into a machine, so for example 3D printing, it's pointless to give them a PDF. The machine is not doing anything with a PDF. You only create more headache and probably a longer time to translate a PDF into something the machine can read than the machine actually needs to fabricate the whole stuff.
That's what Lachlan's doing.
Yeah.
Trying to interpret PDFs, basically.
So, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
So the discussion I had before that just with a 3D printing company in Melbourne, and they said, the only thing that really holds us back is architects with their PDFs.
Yeah.
So as long as they produce PDFs, we never can be as productive as we could be, because we don't need a PDF. And they insist on even with Revit. So the architect's pinnacle of digital tools and digital doing is Revit. But again,
says who?
if you talk to a lot of architects,
Yeah.
and you ask them what digital tools are you using, it's Revit.
It's Revit.
But again, Revit is just a way of producing a set of PDFs as well with some more information. Or it's mostly useless. So again, it's useless direct information. So with what you can do with the CSS things, if you're being at the end, you've got different kind of components, they all come together, they're all being assembled at the end, they assemble a fully digital 3D model with its knowledge of digital information into the model. To go then from there into a system, a G-code generator, where you can produce G-code. You know what G-code is? It's machining code, etc. Is relatively straightforward. Again, people have done that before. You don't need to do it by yourself. There are certain libraries around that assist you with that. So suddenly you could go by far quicker from design to fabrication. Good. So that's the reason why CSS programming is something we start, or a way of thinking. Not that you probably would immediately find it in architecture firms, but you're not immediately going to retirement either. So sometimes we teach you things that, whether if you go to a box standard company and you would say, I know CSS programming, they might say you're going to do the homepage if you explain that it's homepage programming, because the homepage is a disaster or that, and you end up there. But I think slowly, but faster than you think, it will infiltrate architecture. There's also, Grasshopper. You think Grasshopper is the absolute norm? 2007.
It's not normal. Yeah.
No.
Definitely
2008. Well, when is Grasshopper?
About 2007. Yeah.
Like that. So David Rutten, the guy who started Grasshopper, was very busy 2007, 2008, publishing manuals and tutorials for VB scripting for Rhino.
And then he decided to make something visual. Look,
Because
the only reason I think Grasshopper has been so successful. No, there's two reasons. Sorry, there's two reasons Grasshopper is so successful. Rhino is a very powerful software package, but it's very simple. So they've basically just made everything do what it's meant to with geometry, and it's up to you as a user to work out what's going on. So it's not bogged down in architecture or boat building or anything like that. It just says that's a surface, that's a line, that's a point, and then you work that out. And then someone came along and decided to build a really easy user interface to attach to that with code, and that's Grasshopper. And then those two things formulaically just exploded into what we've currently got. So
really say, well, I understand now from Rhino that I'm going to do a line, because I have to do a line in order to build, and out of a few lines I can create a surface. So hold on, I understand that process of modeling. I also, if somebody gives me certain boxes that I just connect to each other that does the same thing, it's not just such a big jump forward. Then here's your Python thing with nothing in there. The black field, a cursor is blinking, and I have to write something in there.
Yeah. So they've tried, like, Dynamo. You've heard of Dynamo? Like, I think the person who made it was trying to do a good job. Like, he was interested. He really loved Grasshopper, and he decided, I want Grasshopper for Revit. So he made Dynamo. Revit Auto just purchased it. Yeah, it's good. They can hear me. You can hear me, right? John Lun, and who else is online? Sean. Yeah, they should be able to hear me. The problem is Revit isn't as simple as Rhino, so the API is absolutely nuts. And so if you go into Dynamo, you actually have to start to learn all the inner machinations of Revit for it to actually function. And that's a massive wall on people being able to do any work. And then as well, Revit's not necessarily, Revit, Dynamo's not necessarily making things easier with the user interface. And so that's where things sort of stop. But as you guys are well aware, we can start using Grasshopper now in Revit. So you still have to learn the machinations of Revit, as you guys tried last term, right? It's like you have to learn way more than what you would have to just to use Grasshopper, right? But it's at least you're actually you've got that interface that makes things easier to interpret and stuff like that. So we'll get into that.
Cool.
Thanks, Hank.
Thank you. See you around.
Yeah, I just got a question about that.
Yeah, it is Richard.
Yeah. The CSS, all of them, they sound really good, but it sounds like that's kind of pushing all the burdens in front of the job. How would it look like for us when we start working as computational designers?
You mean that all the burdens in the front of the job when you start designing?
Yeah.
Well, yes, yeah, it probably not so much the burdens. It's just whether as soon as a link or connection between something that happened in the later part of the project is enabled to an earlier part, you always can use different links. So the burden would be creating all those links to taking information out of existing Revit model, for example, and absorbing information out of there and just bringing them into another database and we start designing to do things. So I think most of your job will be doing these things in the future that you say, right, our office that I'm going to work with has historic information. Historic information are all the information that potentially are captured digitally through the last 5 to 10 years in various models. And because we build up a certain reputation of the design we've done in terms of a typology, like hospitals or stadiums, and a certain style, we want to replicate them over and over again. Yeah. So we're just going to do that. So we can do and redesign the same thing we've done before over and over again from scratch, which is currently the way we're doing. And it's a little bit assisted with some, the rabbit families, for example, who are in the past with styling details, how a door connects to a wall, and so on, that you don't have to redraw it again. But I think what your role could be out of many is to say, okay, so we can inspect what we've got in the existing databases, can we take some information out of there, and bring them to a new design. So when a designer starts designing a new project build, a senior architect, can I give that person immediately more information than normally?
Okay, so in that case, just when you talk about visualizing everything, right? For example, you mentioned going to the SCPP, going web script, there's things and creating logics, so that this project, everything would be, applying the law. So little things like that. You mentioned that just then that it could be released over and over again, like in different works. Does that mean once we create something we don't become redundant?
No. When do you think? At what point do you think a Formula One car, when an engineering team have the Formula One car, running it? I don't know how fast they go, but let's say they broke the world record of Formula One cars, right? At what point did you think they said, you know what, we've finished, we don't have to make this any better?
Well, but in that case, to improve something, right?
Yeah.
The more you improve it, the more resources it's going to cost. It's going to.
I disagree. If anything, the more you improve something, the cheaper it is to improve with what we're doing. So it's easier to the same amount of effort that it takes to improve it will have even more improvements because you've like the amount of effort it's taken the world to try and digitize planning information, like producing a standardized digitized planning platform has been very difficult, and it's still not finished. But if you look at some countries and cities that have done it, now it only takes them an ounce of effort to improve that information because they've got it in a digitized format, right?
So I don't think that you will compute yourself out of the job.
No.
Or that we compute architects out of the job, but I think what your job is will change. So when I studied architecture, my job as an architect was to take a pen and draw lines. People still do that, but they're going to use a pen, they're going to use a mouse, and then they use a piece of code. So still the job is about there. So I thought about that the other day when we had a discussion on the exponential growth of things and digital twins. And I thought, well, what kind of future jobs of architects could be there? And I just came up with a few imaginary jobs. So one example was, for example, what we've done with the carbon tool is we generated synthetic data, like imaginary buildings, in order to test how much carbon is in the building. Right?
Like we're finally using generative design. It's been very hard to find an actual use for generative design other than for art, because a designer somewhere has an ego and the computer doesn't. And so they go, no, I want it this way because I'm the designer. And the computer says,
I give you 20,000 options. All of those 20,000 options are correct options.
Yeah.
And normally generative design looks for a Pareto curve, the fitness criteria, so that's the best option. But in machine learning, you want to have a lot of data. So 10,000 super options and not so super options are perfect. This is a big data set. So you can create a lot of big data sets, and you could influence the data set on a bias. So machine learning, you heard about bias in machine learning. So for example, that machine learning, because of the data set you give, will give a certain group a better credit rating versus another group. So these are biases in that, because data have bias. If you take data from the class now and say, what should that classroom be, male-oriented or female-oriented? Well, it's a male-oriented. It's only males in the classroom, so it's biased. Of course, women exist as well, and women go to university as well. So you probably have to bias the data set of only males with a synthetic data set on females. So you could look into, if you have a machine learned design there, or data in machine learning, or data out of the built environment that captures certain things in the built environment, and say, hey, I know that stuff is biased, so I have to give the machine other set of data that correct that bias. And because the data we're going to operate in is 3D models, we could generate a set of biased data that just influence the other data set to balance things out, which is Laughlin's masters. So he said, well, there's a lot of floor plans that can get out of domain.com, of real built buildings, and that's actual buildings, how buildings can build floor plans. But they all have a problem. They have not been optimized towards waste. So I have to create another data set of synthetically designed data, floor plans. They've been optimized to waste, and combine both together, that the machine is able to produce out of machine learning data set that, or floor plans that have a knowledge of waste. So that could be an architecture in the future. It's just one example of creating biased data sets.
But because I remember Lachlan.
Yeah, go for it. We can talk. If you want to talk to me, I know what he's talking about.
Yeah. Because normally he said it first, and I repeat. I'm really sorry, the short class, the second class, and it's just been very, very short.
Go for it.
Thank you. But if you know where I live? Level 4, room 19. So if you got questions, come after class in.
Okay.
I'm most likely sitting around in my office and
doing nothing.
Level 4, room 19.
19, yeah. Then we can have a longer chat if I manage to go on. See ya.
See ya.
Yeah. Because I want to ask you guys if I continue.
Yeah, go for it.
Because Lachlan, I remember that he was doing AI for mapping what's it called, floor plans or
Yeah.
something. He did that, and that because when I went to the conference, he was still making it. Does that mean what we right? Does that mean that when we graduate, we'll be leaning more towards research and
Lachlan's only one student, one grad.
yeah?
His class was like a class of 30.
Yeah, more people.
Yeah. No, but what I'm saying is there isn't necessary like this particular degree isn't teaching you guys to be researchers. It is, but it's not teaching you guys. I don't think it is trying to prepare you to be going into academic research. Okay? The reason it seems like there's this sort of like, hey, research and new thinking is actually a really good idea is because of that crazy exponential growth that everyone's kind of aware of, right? That if you need to be able to keep up with what's going on to survive. Yeah?
Yeah.
Like, and I think you guys have all the natural tools that people need to do that. You're all born after 1985, right? And so you've grown up with technology changing. So most of you were born 2002. So I was in year 7 in 2001. So let me just recalibrate myself. At that stage, I would have had ADSL internet. So between then and now, you guys would have been in like maybe primary school or high school, just going into high school, when smartphones were sort of getting released, right? Yeah. And a smartphone, if I actually just go back and try and recall what that was like, it was this like, it was like almost like a square screen on this big rectangular brick. Huh? No, the iPhone 1. And it had, we were using, the internet on your phone currently, where it says H+. Anyone using internet on their phone at that stage would have been using an internet called H. Like, that's the speed of the internet, the wireless internet that phone had access to. And most people were only using the internet on their smartphones to, like, they were using Wi-Fi. They weren't necessarily using mobile internet. Mobile internet was for MMSs. What are you looking at?
iPhone 1.
Okay.
They found an eBay for $1 million.
Huh?
It's only for $1 million.
$1 million for an iPhone 1? There's no way it's going to get sold. I've got really old tech somewhere in a drawer somewhere. I never bought an iPhone, but
it didn't even have like the App Store or anything. It's just like a phone.
I think it would have had the App Store, but if I was relying on, like, you were like, what's your Wi-Fi, right? Like the idea that we're getting 5G right now as a wireless internet service that's happened over your lifetime, right? In my lifetime, I didn't even have the internet when I was born. It didn't exist in Australia. It wasn't something that a regular person at home could own. And so over my younger years, I had to learn what the internet was and how you connected to it with dial-up and what websites were, and like this, we're talking about websites that look like this. Sorry, I'm going off track, but like that was your standard website. That's not real, but like, what did Facebook
Way back in show.
first day appearance?
Oh, probably not like all the way back.
2004 is I think it's way back.
That's probably what it looked like.
It's first called the Facebook.
Yeah. So when I grew up, I wanted to get into animation, and I had, like, my dad had friends whose sons worked in that industry, and they got me cracked versions of like Macromedia Flash, and that was back when I was starting high school, right? And most of the stuff that was accessible now to most people wasn't. So like Blender didn't exist, and like the idea of free software for students didn't exist, and definitely like YouTube wasn't really a source of information. It was a source of entertainment. Like now, like, how many of you have opened Python up on YouTube? Everyone, almost all of you, right? You've watched someone showing a Python tutorial on YouTube, because reading it is not as easy as just watching someone code it while you code it. The fact that you probably might have 2 monitors at home, right? Yeah. Yeah. When I was born, there would have been probably 1 CPU in my house, and that CPU would have probably been 1 or 2 of 5, and that would have been in the various calculators in my parents' like stationery cupboards. Right? That's probably the only CPU that existed. Maybe the TV had it, but I doubt it. That TV definitely didn't have a CPU. It was electrical. It was electronic. It wasn't a computer. And yeah, and so I've grown up with technology changing every year, and so have you, right? Technology has changed for you almost every year. Do you remember Pokemon Go?
Yeah, I still play it.
Do you remember the people talking about Bitcoin and blockchain, and now they've got these non-fungible credit images, and yeah, and the idea that like scammers have new ideas of how to do stuff, and things are just changing constantly, right? And you guys have grown up learning how to adapt to it. And that's exactly what this is about, this course, I think. It's about learning not only the most up-to-date thinking in this stuff, but then also how do you adapt. Because 5 weeks ago, you had no concept of applying CSS to architecture. And now your brains had to adapt to that. And now it feels almost, hopefully, like it's like a fairly simple approach. You just need to know what to apply, right? Cool. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because right now the biggest problem I have is I don't really know what's going to happen after university. It looks really bleak.
Why?
No, it's just it feels like what we're learning here. It's good that we get to try everything, but I feel like we're becoming jack of all trades, master of none.
Have you haven't done you haven't done an architecture degree, right? I've done an architecture degree, right? And does that sound like it's a specific degree?
What do you mean by that?
Well, the job of an architect is almost to be the jack of trades and master of none. As an architect, I sit as a nucleus, from my perspective, between lots of different parties on a project. And as well, the project that I'm working on could be, and this is very, very much my position, it could be a sports stadium, it could be a train station, it could be a jail, it could be a school. They're very similar. It could be a ferry terminal. It could be an old folks' home. It could be a university campus. It could be a substation, right? These are all buildings that architects do. And some architects specialize in one of those types of buildings, right? You will find architects that only design jails, and they will spend their whole entire lives only designing jails, and poor them. But they didn't come out of university and say, I've learned everything I need to know to design jails, right? They don't teach you how to design jails at uni. They don't. They don't teach you 99% of what you need to know to do your job at uni. The thing is, the 5 years at uni that I spent, that only gave me that 1%, is literally all you need to then do the rest of that 99%. Right? You just need that massive 1% is huge in terms of knowledge, and it's that 1% that's going to get you going. Does that make sense? So you've got the benefit of being able to see other people that have gone through this degree getting jobs, right? Most of them are getting jobs. Hopefully. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the people that have graduated.
What about the people who haven't got it?
What do you mean?
Yeah, they say like 80-something%.
Don't get a job?
No, you do get it, and then like there's that.
20%?
Yeah.
What about the 20%? They get
It's not no.
They don't get a job in the industry. Now, I don't know where they're getting a job, but I can tell you now, 70%. I'm making this up, but so it looks like 40% of people in architecture with this particular UK degree, 40% are getting jobs. It's rough. Yeah, it's rough. This is the thing. The university is they're not the picky choosy ones, right? They're running as a business, and they're saying, welcome anyone and everyone as long as we have like the space and we're allowed, like the government has effectively restricted how dodgy they can be. We're going to teach you how to be whatever you want to be, right? And then it's this capitalism free market, which has a lot of different factors involved, like nepotism and cronyism, and racism and sexism and all of those types of things. They're the ones that are going to say, hey, we think you're valuable. Okay? And they do. They think this degree is valuable because they are hiring people from this degree. Right? And the reason I mention that cronyism and nepotism is that some people do get jobs because their dad's, friends with someone. And some people, like my wife, had to change her last name to be able to get accepted into doing job interviews, right? And she doesn't even have the most exotic last name either. Like you can actually pronounce it. Most Australians can pronounce it, but she had to do that. So that still exists in this world. And I know I'm literally looking at a bunch of Asian faces right now. But it's just the case, right? Unfortunately. So it's not a bleak future, mate. It's not at all.
I don't want to sound really pessimistic, but it's when I work with other people, and when I go to conference, every time I feel really, really stupid. I don't even know what's going on.
You've got imposter syndrome.
I think so, maybe. I feel like how am I gonna even keep up with these guys if I can't even understand? How am I gonna work
Yeah,
with them?
okay. Look, this you guys have, some people do this go through this particular process really quickly, and some people don't. Okay, this is the Dunning-Kruger effect, and I can tell you now, anecdotally, it has been absolutely true for most of everyone I know, including myself. Okay, in the X direction, you have ignorance to knowledge, so like not knowing anything to knowing a lot. And to be honest, this particular graph should just go like, oh no, actually this one's fine. Yep. And then on the y-axis, you've got confidence. And what happens usually is most people go through this process quite quickly. So they begin to learn a particular thing. They're starting to be introduced to the concepts of it, and their confidence goes up. So they feel like they know a lot, when in fact they only know like a tiny little bit. And it's because there is this threshold of getting to a point where you know enough that you are also aware of how much you don't know, right? Like you guys are aware of quite a lot of things that you don't know or you're not capable of. Like just even opening up Grasshopper and learning how to code the first few little scripts in Grasshopper, just by doing that, you can see all the other shit in Grasshopper that you're not using. Like, oh, I've used 4 components, but there's like 5,000 components. Great. And oh, I've used lists. Like, once you start learning about lists and trees, it's like, shit, I don't know how they work. Do you feel like you've mastered trees yet? Right. But you know they exist, and they can be tackled. You can eventually tackle them one day. But you would say you're not very good at trees, like managing tree list data. But you guess what? You're in the valley of despair. You know enough that your confidence is set you to being really, really, really upset, right? Guess what? We all had to start somewhere, right? I guess also what? You know more than me than when I came out of uni. About this stuff that we're doing. You know way more than me than when I came out of uni. I came out of uni doing this stuff by myself in my spare time, teaching myself. And I taught myself the wrong things and the right things, but I had no one to give me that kickstart and tell me, okay, that, go that way, and for that, go that way. And here, I've made this mistake before, don't make it. Like, for example, that eval thing, right? I didn't have that, and you guys have. And so you're going to come out of uni knowing way more than me coming out of uni, okay? You're looking, like, if you're comparing yourself to some people like myself or like people at conferences, right? Is that those are people that are in the same position as me. They've been in the industry for 10 years. 10 years is a long time. It's a really long time. You can do a lot and learn a lot in those 10 years. And you learn way more in the shit than you do at uni. Because you're getting paid, and you've got other people that are getting paid around you. We're going to talk about, next week we're going to talk about the rest of the term's assignments. But group work at uni is shit. Even though, like, you can all be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do a really good job. Like, I feel like Owen would do a really good job. He would try and do a good job. It's just, he's going to try and do a good job in a different manner to you, right? And it just doesn't work. It doesn't mesh. I've never seen group work. There's always, and usually people end up not learning anything from it because they just end up doing the things that they're good at. But at work, you get paid, and you're doing it 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, and there's so much you can do and learn in that time. And as well, you guys are good at doing things quickly. People don't expect people to produce things as quickly as we can. So we might be given a week to do something and we do it in 2 days. Well, let's say 4 days. It gives us an extra day to experiment, learn, etc., etc., etc. Now, I'm sure you're going to hit me with like all these live questions, but we've got stuff to talk about. So, what are we doing this week? I want to know where you got to, and we'll talk about the assignment, what we're going to submit. So, and as well, I was thinking maybe we can do a little bit of like just a Python revision again. But first, I want to know who has any questions about what we're currently doing, except for Paolo, because I know Paolo's got a lot.
I say like fuck with this.
I know, so I'm going to give you guys the opportunity, and then if you don't have anything, then I'll go back to Paolo.
It's really big learning curve, I guess. Especially with like having to put into words. Very difficult. Like I know what to type, all that kind of things.
No,
But
it's
it's
time.
very difficult to just actually get it working.
Right.
So that's my main problem.
What's not working?
Well, I understand like the concept and everything, but actually like getting it on my Reddit.
Can you share your screen?
Well, it's more of the fact that I think I haven't like modified the Python or the cluster or anything like that. And I'm trying to add has toilet, but except has meeting.
Oh yeah, okay. So how do we do that? Is that what you're talking about?
That's what
Okay. So you want to add extra functions
Yes.
to this thing. We want to do, in this case, like if we divide the process up, we want to tackle a different type of analysis, right? So when you say has a meeting room, what does that mean?
Well, I was thinking like if it just has like one table, just
Okay,
it will reconfigure it as like meeting,
sure.
like how if it has a plumbing fixture, it's has toilet.
So someone hasn't named the room, but they've ended up putting like a boardroom table in the room, and it just immediately goes, oh, this is a meeting room, which does exist in hotels of exhibition centers. They have rooms that have, they're hireable meeting rooms for a conference and stuff like that.
That's what I was getting to.
Cool. You get to learn, by the way, as I mentioned before, about all those different types of buildings. If you work on lots of different sectors, you get to work on sport and all of that. You get to learn about you actually get to learn about what happens in the world behind closed doors. Like what actually happens in behind like the back of house of train stations or the back of house of hotels and stuff like that. Like how do hotels actually operate and what do they need, and you actually learn about people, and then you have to put that into your buildings. It's very people oriented and like people trying to earn money and live oriented. Let's go back. I have to remember which CSS we were using. Was it CSS Dev? Yeah.
Andrew, can I ask really quickly?
Yes.
Why did the CSS.
that I copied to unit work.
No, sorry. Just the search. This is like a syntax question.
Yeah.
So the search. Why is it like //b unit //b?
Okay, so this is regex.
Yeah.
Have I mentioned regex to you guys?
Yeah. And I guess you just coded it in the actual dev already, or what?
Pardon?
Did you already code that into the? Oh no, but yeah, it was an empty one. So...
Huh?
No, because.
Okay, so there is a the one thing that I got you guys to do was copy some stuff into your script early on. This is my script. You guys are, you won't be able to copy it, that's fine. And you can see here part of it was importing this RE library. That's the default Python regex library. And so that's what we're accessing when we type re.search runit blah 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 blah, right? So the \b let's see if I can spell. There we go. So \b, if we go to regex, regexer.com, that'll tell us that \b is referring to a word boundary, and \B is a not word boundary. And this gets a little bit complicated, but what it's actually doing is it's recognizing that the space there is the boundary to the word, but the boundary, like if I said hey, now I'm going to go right includes also up here. Instead of typing \B, instead of I put a space, because we're just saying that we're only considering space as a boundary to a word. It's not going to pick up an includes that starts at the beginning of a line, and it's also not going to pick up an includes at the end of a line, because the space, like the period or full stop, is not a space bar, right? So \B is just this nice little safe piece of code that recognizes full stops, commas, exclamation marks, question marks, basically anything that we understand as ending a word, right?
Yeah, it's like an actual function of what we imported as regex.
Yes, it's part of the regex coding function. Now
I thought you'd wrote it like yourself, like coded it in.
No, it's part of regex. And then the reason it's \B is because we are actually writing now a Python code, and Python also uses / as an exit character for itself. So, like if I were to print print \T, does anyone know what this is going to be? Or hang on, let's go print a \N B. Yeah. So look, so this is an escape character in Python, and so if you write a / in any environment, like in it, then it's going to think that you're trying to do an escape character, and it's going to fuck up. Now, in regex uses / character as an escape character as well. It's using it to do these types of special codes, right? So that if you have a \W, it knows that's a word, not / and W, like if you were to have. So if I go, hey, includes with a \B and \B, it doesn't work, right? Like that, it's not picking that up. If I want that to work, I have to put double \, which then escapes the \, and makes it a backslash for it to get picked up. And so that's what we're seeing here, is we're writing this so that when Python reads it, it knows that we're escaping this backslash, so that the regex that we're writing is backslash b unit backslash b. Yeah? Cool. Welcome to the inception world of coding. But does that make sense?
Yeah. No context.
Yeah, cool. Now back to your question. What we coded here is like, it's a super shortcutty way of doing what we need to do, right? What we'd rather do, I think, is, now let's just say we're going to pick up, I don't know what families I've got in this job, but let's go see. Place a component. What component do we want to place? Let's put a bed in, right? Seeing as it's a hotel. Let's say we don't want to call these units anymore. We want to call these bedrooms. Like we're going to automate that process. The thing is, that's going to ruin some of our other code, because we're saying that if a room is next to a unit, blah blah blah. But we'll do this anyway. So, does this have a room? Yes, and it's called unit. Let's just call it room, or let's call it test. What I've done poorly is, this is saying, hey, just grab plumbing fixtures and make a fixed parameter which has toilet, and set that to true or false. What we'd rather want, I think, is some kind of parameter that just collects a bunch of things. So one thing we could do is we could say, okay, see this bed? It's called, like all these family names, says bed, rectangular placeholder, single bed, blah, 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 lots of really complex stuff. What we could do is we could simplify that and just have in its class name bed. And the bed is, let me just check its category, because Revit absolutely loves its categories. It's probably furniture. Okay, cool. And your meeting room table is probably going to get classified in furniture too. So I'm also shortcutting, like I shortcut a lot. This is currently an instance parameter. You understand instance and type? So if I place another bed, I don't know how to do this properly, because I don't actually know Revit well enough. But if I put a bed in this room, that doesn't have the class bed on it. So I believe what you have to do, if you go to edit type, you have to somehow make this family have class in here rather than out here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is it like when you mentioned that you get other people to pre-prepare for the CSS? Is that what they have to do?
Kind of, yeah. Like you kind of want, like you'd want all your beds to have the class bed on them.
Yeah.
So that way you can. Oh no, I think I know how to do it. But we have to define another parameter, and that's type based, and then it will show up here. But we'll use the instance parameter one for now. So we'll go get furniture, and what this is currently doing is it's saying, this is going to get a bit complicated. It's grabbing all the furniture, and it's going to work out whether or not the furniture is in. How much furniture are we picking up? 1? We should be getting 2 at least. Oops. 2, yep. So that's grabbing our furniture. And there it is there. Let's just get the curved boundaries of these rooms instead of their solids. So there's the 2 beds, and we're getting the center of the beds, and we're working out. So blah blah blah. There's 2 beds, and this is gonna end up being bad, I think. Is it? It looks like it. These need to be, I think, flattened. So that's going to give us a nice true-false value set for the beds, and we can dispatch the beds per room. So there they are there. So now only, like, in branch 9, which is probably, this room, there's that single bed, and in branch 29, which is probably the room that I just mentioned, but let's say this room, then there's that bed, right? And if I put more than one piece of furniture in there, so let's go grab an armchair. That's also furniture, cool. And we class that one. Oops. Then one of these rooms, here we go, has got the single bed and the armchair in it, right? So we can now, this is now running along the lines of moving into not needing that has toilet parameter, but rather saying, hey, just produce a list of all the classes in the room. So we can say, Revit, get us the element parameter on these objects, and the element parameter that we want is going to be class. I think it's with a capital C.
So
There's bed and armchair. Huh?
Class is just like a fuller version of has toilet, like that element.
This is currently what we're doing is we're getting the class of objects that are contained in the room. And at the moment, it's only furniture.
Yeah.
Pardon? Then what we can do, now class could be a few things. So if we say, okay, class is going to be like tags, or the way that we tag things in through the normal way that CSS works is it's just a space bar. So this is bed and it's also single. And this is an armchair. And guess what? It's also a single armchair. Like it's a single person armchair, right? A singe. Actually, this doesn't work. Let's not do that. Let's just go armchair comfy. So it's got a single bed in it, a bed and single. And some people might even say, okay, if you're going to write single as a class, it should actually be single bed because we don't want single to get like tied up with other singles in some way. But then what we want to do is we want to combine this into just like either a single list or a single parameter. So the way I would do it is I'm going to join my branches by using the delimiter that the class uses. Why is that not working? Is it because these aren't actually texts? Okay, let's call it. I don't care. Okay? So just so you're aware, did I mention this last week? Revit. The Revit nulls are different to Grasshopper nulls. I think I did mention this, right? Right, there's a little Python component that I've put in here. Yeah, there it is. That solves the problem. There we go. Actually, it's probably better to do it this way. But, okay. So that gives us a bunch of empties and these guys. Then we're going to split that because we're just going to turn this into a list. So we're going to split it by space. So it gives us that list there. We can probably actually get rid of all the duplicates. So do you guys, know what to do if you want to get rid of a duplicate values in a list? An easy way of doing that, think about Python, so maybe? Huh? No. A list, so a list in Python is just a list of items. So I can have 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? What's the name of the object that can't have something repeating? Don't know? Very close. If you use this object, it is a tuple. No. It's a set. Sets are things that can't have an item in it repeat. If you do try and make that happen, what it's doing is it's thinking that you're referring back to the item that it's there. So if I said add 1 to a set and 1's already in the set, it goes, it's already there. I don't have to add another 1 to the set. And Grasshopper lets you do that. So if you've got create set function, it basically turns, like it's not going to do anything in this case, but it means that if we've got more than one bed in there, it's not going to be bed, single, and some hotel rooms do have 2 beds in them, right? Just saves us having to have like a big long string of classes. And then what we'll do is we can either put this back into a delimited piece of text, or we could turn it into a string. And I've got this nice little component up here called listify. Did I say string? List. I've got this nice little component up here called listify. So we can use that, and that will produce a bunch of lists, and one of which will have bed, single bed, armchair, and comfy in it as a list. And then this component here is merging all our parameters. So let's just look at this one here, for example. If I drag this guy up, nothing's going to happen because it's getting put into this component that produces a JSON object. So if we now just look at this list, we've got just the way merge works normally. If I try and merge something and their branches are different, they don't append to each other. So what I've done is I've just made sure that the input to all of these other merges, like if I can do it here as well, are simplified. So if I just make sure that this is also simplified, now that last little list element is coming through here, and we just need to also make sure there is a contains class key associated with that. And so now our dictionary is going to say contains class list, sorry, blah 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 blah. So
this class is already in there, right?
No, it's
No.
connect. I put where is it? Connect class.
Oh.
So we've got things that are connected, and we've got things that contained. It's containing it. It's containing it. Does that make sense? These are the rooms that it's connected to.
Yeah.
This is the thing. This is things that are in it.
But that code back there was you when you wrote the contains class, it picks up class as the as the what it's trying to
because I've just said only get us the class. We could
Yeah.
get it to pick up other things. We could get it
Yeah,
to pick up the quantity of objects, and we could get it to pick up like the name of the family and all of that. But let's just use class for now.
But like, yeah, the fact that class exists, it just corresponds, it just falls in line.
Yep. So we can then say the search function is going to be data contains class, and then we're going to look for we're going to get rid of this just to clean it up. So we're going to look for bed in data contains class. The cool thing about if we didn't do it as a list, if we did it as like a string delimited thing, then we could use regex instead. So there's a benefit to doing it one way or another. Do you know what I mean? We could also technically just join any list with a spacebar and then do it as regex with the Python, but whatever. And then what are we going to do to said room? We're going to say this is not actually the CSS that I'm using, is it? We're going to say new name is hotel bedroom. Yeah. Oh, it is the CSS. No, it's not. Let's just copy that over. And so now this is probably going to have, there's the hotel bedroom. And it's running. So let's just go put a tag on that room. Now this is fucking up quite a lot because we were using unit for other things, but let's assume that we're doing meeting room instead, right? And so tag all my rooms with the room tag and just show me the name and the number. So there's hotel bedroom. That doesn't have the class bed on it, right? If it did, I've forgotten where to get my view user interface properties. Hotel bedroom. Cool. So now, like if we also included plumbing fixtures in this, then these rooms with toilets in them are also going to have a like toilet, right? So it's not like this doesn't just have to be furniture. So there's the toilet, and so we could potentially get rid of this crappy parameter. And this one. Oops. And then up here we had data has toilet equals, like it has a toilet in it. Rather we can say we'll copy this guy. Toilet in data contains class. Huh?
It's just a little more complex.
Now that means, now I can put other plumbing fixtures in and we can write more, better versions of code, right?
Everything changed the toilet.
Huh? Everything's to toilet now? Yeah, I know, because it... Hang on, can we undo? Yeah, cool. Cool?
Isn't that focused on just like the actual object or the project?
Pardon?
So that means are you just naming explicitly because on your Revit, right? The tags are centered on the component itself.
The tag is centered on where the room center is. So there's the room center. If I auto tag this, it's gonna put it there. This is actually something I want to do better at, like, not with you guys, but I'd like to write a script that recenters rooms based on like how the tag will show up. So if you stretch a model in Rhino in one direction, so you stretch it in the direction that you would be reading left to right, and then you find the centroid of the model. So in this case, the centroid the centroid of each room. So the centroid would kind of be, centroid is actually the wrong term. The center of mass of each room. So the center of mass would be, roughly there. That's also not true. The point furthest away from any edge. And then move the position of the room so that it's there, so that whenever a tag does get put in, the tag is in the most reasonable point. I don't know how I just got hiccups, but I just got hiccups.
Isn't it because, Revit does, is this Revit's automatic placement though?
No, I placed the room. So it was me, it was the human that made the stupid error of putting a room in. I just deleted a room, I shouldn't do that.
But does Revit have an automatic system already? Or? No?
You have to do it. You have to do that to stuff manually.
So someone's in Cox is manually putting all those room tags.
No, they're automatically putting them in. This is okay. Let me rephrase. Someone in Cox. This is the other annoying thing. Most people will go clean this up. Like, so let's say these guys here are down here, right? And someone goes, that's not good. What they'll do is they'll grab unit and they'll move unit up there. They'll just move the tag. They'll clean the tags up and they'll leave the room position alone, right? So if the tag gets deleted, its position also gets deleted, and then if you automatically retag, things die. And also, I'm going to go to another plan, and I'm going to delete all the tags. I want you to see how fucking dumb Revit is, and how, like, think about it. How easy would it be just to simplify this whole process, right? Like, it's pretty simple. I'm going to pick this wall up and move it, and pick this door up and move it. I'm going to have to, actually, this is the wrong place to do this. Okay, I'm gonna grab these walls and just make this whole section bigger. Now, look, it dragged the tag with it, right? And but what didn't it do?
It didn't change what was the...
Look, it didn't change this center, but it changed this one up here. Why? Because there's some like silly code that's trying to be automatic, and it's just not doing it perfectly. And so sometimes what happens is, I don't want that. Sometimes, so see what just happened there? I just want to drag this line segment down, but when I do it, Revit goes, oh, you want to do that? Okay, I'm going to drag everything down.
Isn't it locked?
I don't think it's locked. So what someone would do instead is they go, okay, I'll do this. Like they have to basically think around Revit, and then they're going to have to remove this and all of those types of things. It's just like the fact that you can automatically center everything is not programmed into Revit, but it is. You could program it into Grasshopper, but we're getting sidetracked. Next CSS question.
I'll ask a small one.
Sure.
So with the JSON loads, and then you did like the comma. So with join,
hang on.
So join CSS one.
This guy?
Yeah. Can you just explain what it does again? You said like gets rid of the spaces or something.
Okay, let's
not the loads. I understand the loads and dumps.
I know I'm not going to talk about loads.
Yeah.
I'm going to write a really simple CSS script. It's really, really simple. It's not going to do anything, right? What does this mean to you?
Is a list in.
It's a list.
Yeah.
It's a list of what?
Is it keys?
Huh? Let me keep going. I'm going to make it less simple so that your brain works.
I was actually watching this. I forget what it's called.
Key value?
Yeah.
Okay. So what are we looking at right now? What's the first thing you see?
List.
Okay, we've got list. We've got a list of what?
Keys or values.
No, we've got a list of. What's that mean?
Sets.
No. Come on.
Dictionary.
Yeah. Cool.
Sticky notes.
Is it going to be useful?
Yeah.
I'll add more to that if we need them.
You can post in chat later.
Sure. So if something's got a little, it's a executing function. That kind of makes sense, right? Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. And a variable can mean anything. So like a function is a variable in a way. So we've got a list of dictionaries, and in our dictionary we have a key and a value, right? But if I try and JSON load that, as a list, it errors. It errors because it needs a string or text, but instead it got a list, right? Because it's a string of it's a list of strings. I'll just print X just to show you. You see what's going on now? What does this tell you? This is different to this, right?
Yeah.
There is a list, and that's a string. And that's a string with a tab because I added a tab. And that's a string, blah, blah, blah. The JSON imports requires just a single string which represents your JSON object.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is I'm saying X is nothing, but it could also be new line, but it could also be nothing.
Oh, and then it just goes through the
Dot
list.
join list, the list. So when I print X now, it's the string representation of that list.
Yeah.
And now it loads. See, there's no error. That's all that's doing.
How come it's still like stacked? Is that just?
Because I just typed new line there.
Oh, okay.
If I put a nothing,
That's what. Yeah.
it'll join it all together. But the JSON import function can understand the stacked.
Yeah.
So this is the other thing. If I didn't do this, comment that out, and we said, hey, use multi-line data. So now that's a single object. Is it erroring? Why is it erroring? Oh, it's still a list. Because see this list access? It's still always going to make it a list, no matter what. So if we want to be able to enable the function of this to be good, so we can even like put multiple CSSs into the one thing.
Yep.
Then we have to enable as a list and just join all those lists as one object.
Yeah.
And then we're good. Cool. So that's what that's for. Any other questions? Huh?
There's probably one hiding. I guess it's kind of like a theoretical question, but if you're like saying you use this so much or whatever, do you reckon you would see this being written as like a more readable thing?
Yeah.
In a more readable state?
I think it's going to look more like
you make it like a plugin for
I think it's going to look more like this. So dot toilet. Like maybe double dot toilet is, contains the class toilet. Name is toilet. That's way easier to read than this, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, the reason this is good for you guys right now is it does require you to think in Python operations, which is good because I want you to. But yeah, we could come up with a much simpler syntax. And the one that I just had here, actually, like this question mark one, this doesn't exist in the typical CSS. So CSS search, they're called search operations, I think. CSS search, what else could it be? Selectors, that's it. So this is like all the various different stuff that has been developed for web dev. So there's, dot means class. Stringing a bunch of dots together just means it has to satisfy both. That's and. Dot name one, dot name two, dot name one and dot name two. Putting a space means it's to do with like a descendant. So we could say, hey, just get any. That's what that double dot was. So let's just do. What did I write it? If I went, hey, just go grab any room object, and then that contains, no, that doesn't work. Never mind. This one I don't, we'll ignore this one for now. ID, get anything, get the element, get an element with its class, blah, blah, blah. None of that stuff allows you to sort of like write JavaScript as a selector, right? There's no sort of crazy, hey, you can write re.search, blah, 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 like something really complicated. And so what I was considering was, if you start any string of text with a question mark, then it could then understand this as being your complex Python. So you can write within a system the complex Python and also write dot toilet name is toilet. But this is all like, this just makes it easier for us to play around with like the syntax and stuff.
Yeah.
You'll notice, they don't have greater than or greater thans here. Oh, yes, they do. No, they don't. Forget that one. That one's parents or not parents or whatever. But you can't. There isn't an attribute is equal to or greater than a value, which I think we want in architecture. So we have to start sort of potentially layering into the system an architectural CSS style, because greater thans, less thans are really important to us. Shall I talk about what we need by next week?
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys are going to hate me again, but I don't care. So what I'd like to see is some CSS written for this space. Now, there's a few things that you could write CSS for. You could write CSS for the rooms, which we're already starting to do. And you're playing around with like turning things into meeting rooms and stuff like that. There are also doors here. Yeah? And you were playing around with door analysis earlier on a few weeks ago. So you could write CSS for that as well. But it's basically the exercise that you've been doing over this last week and being sort of combined into a single report and script and CSS being submitted, right? Some ideas for you to move forward. This is only a one level building. It's very easy to add extra levels, and I'm happy if you just do that, you can just copy these levels and stack them on top of each other. That means you could be analyzing something other than just the name of the room, but you could also be analyzing its elevation or its level name or whatever. You guys should be good enough with Revit to do that, right? To take this level and repeat it a few times. Yep.
How quick is the response time? Like if you had multiple levels?
This is the thing. You don't need Grasshopper running while you're coding. I mean, while you're running Revit. So you can do the Revit work and then just run Grasshopper.
Yeah. But like, I'm talking about like just when it updates. That shouldn't be a problem. Right?
Shouldn't be that big of an issue. Okay, that's one thing. There's quite a lot of stuff that we haven't done. We haven't placed objects using Rhino Inside. So there might be a way that you can write CSS that actually works out how to put windows on rooms. Because look, we've got a bunch of hotel rooms without windows. That's something that's another potential thing that you could look into. I'm letting you guys kind of explore all these different things because it's quite it gets difficult. Because the thing is, the instant you want to add windows, then you potentially have to go add more analysis to the analysis part. Like, you need to analyze whether or not, like, how a room's connected, which wall is actually pointing outside. It's really weird, complex shit, right? So that's a difficult one, I think. But, if you try it and it doesn't work, still submit it. Then there's also, if we just look at our Grasshopper script, if it wants to open, this particular part of the script is shit. Okay? Saying, hey, go find only new name and then apply it to the model is not an appropriate way of doing it.
That's the code that broke for me. So should we like just do the one today?
What?
The script on this one for me is the one I was trying to fix. Should I still do this, or should I just focus on the stuff we were doing today?
No, you can do whatever you want. I want you to focus on I want to focus on something that you've found an issue with and are trying to fix. Okay? Because there's a lot of things to fix.
Yeah.
Yep. The thing is, just like this code that we've written here, we've written this in a way so that we don't have to write more code in the future if a new object is added to a room and we want to pick up what that object is, right? Like, for example, let's say I want to detect when there's a fire hose reel added to a room. We're going to call that fire hose reel cupboard, for example, or something like that. We can now do that quite easily with this code. We don't have to add more code to this system. But if we want to change parameters on the model, then this doesn't work, right? This is only letting us change new name, and this is only letting us change the tier. We don't have any control over department and stuff like that. So what is a way that you can write this code so that it picks up any change, grabs its parameter, and pushes that to the model? And we can talk about how to do that now if you want. I'm not going to do it, but we'll talk about how. So can you guys see?
Sorry, can you explain that again? What was going?
Okay. Huh?
Like,
so at the moment, this script is picking up only this parameter, new name.
Yeah.
It's saying, hey, go get the new name parameter and apply it to our model. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have a fairly good, like, this is just filtering out anything that doesn't have new name, and it filters out all the parameters that it doesn't have that, and it filters out all the rooms that don't have a new name, and then it produces, it uses the set element parameter to set those parameters on those rooms.
Yeah.
Right? So if I was to say, okay, I want this to be able to do anything, I want it to be able to do new tier, new department, new class, new anything. One thing, can you see a pattern between these? Like, is there a pattern between these two that's also a pattern between these two?
You make name or tier like a variable.
Yep. Or more so, if we just got rid of new underscore, then the thing that's left over is the parameter that we're going to change. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, look. So this thing's spitting out data. And if this thing's looking for new name. But rather, if we said, print I, let's just have a look at what it is. So these are all your data sets. And if we actually look at those data sets as lists, so for K in I, K meaning key. Actually, I'll write this in English, shall I? For I, for data. So these are the keys in each of those objects. Contains class, tier, name, connect tier, ID, class, blah, 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 blah. And look, eventually we're going to find new tier. And new tier, blah, 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 new name, blah, etc., etc. So these variables are these keys in a way are little flags for us to know that something's had a new thing done to it, right? So that is now a string. Key is a string. So we can say if new in, actually let's go new underscore in key, then out object dot append. I'm going to write this in a way that just makes it easy for now, but we'll fix it up really quickly. Out object append data key. Oops. So that's this data object, and we're getting this key, and we know we want that key because that key has new in it. Yeah? Can you guys see that logic? For each data object, for each key in each object, if new underscore is in the key as a string, then append data key. Or you could actually almost append, yeah, that's how you want it to run. And so this out object is going to get broken because I haven't written this properly. This out object's just going to get messy because oh no, it's not. So here's all the new tiers, and then there's all the new names, right? Now, that's not necessarily going to work for us. How come that's giving us tiers first and then names?
Because it's ordered first.
No, but it shouldn't. That's a weird thing. Let's have a little explore into how it's dealing with the data. So if we print each object each time, so it's printing, this is the first object, it hits contains class tier, connect tier, blah blah blah, and then it hit new tier here. Okay, and then let's just say, hey, if you actually hit something with new, just print like so it hit new tier and then it appended that. Oh, I know why. It's just by chance, the list of rooms that have tier modifications are before the list of rooms that have like just name changes. That's why it's just stacked them up in order. Okay, that makes sense. So how do I do this? I'm literally doing this for you. So by you asking me how to do it, I've done it for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever, we'll just do it. Okay, so out object, we're going to make an out object A and an out object B. This is going to get complicated because I don't know how to do trees.
That should be like the extra mix question.
How do you do trees? Teach Andrew how to do trees.
No, like just don't do it and then like get someone to figure it out.
Do you want me to stop? I'll just stop. Shall I just stop?
I don't know if somebody wants to.
Do you want me to just stop? Well, I've given you half of it. Pardon? Shall we? Okay, let's explore trees together. This is a good example of how I pick up Python. Like, I don't know how to do Python trees. Let's see if I can work out how to do Python trees. So we'll go turn on the tree access type, tree access, and I'm going to go, write a list of just a simple list that's going to end up being a tree. So I'm going to make a series which is 4 items long. Is that going to work? No, it's not. I'm going to make it 8 items long. I'm going to partition that into a partition list of 4, So that means there are 4 items in each list, and then I'm going to partition those lists up into 2, and guess what? We've now got a tree, right? Where branches are. These branches are structured a certain way. I'm going to plug that into X, and I'm just double checking that it's got tree access. Why is it erroring? Okay, cool. And if I go and print X, it's going to give me this object, which is the point at which I'm going to start doing some reverse engineering. So some useful things to explore in Grasshopper, or Python, sorry. There is a function called dir, and if you use that on any object, it will give you a list of all that class's inbuilt functions. So if I run that on this object here, dir x, then that's telling me it has functions like add range, all data, branch count, branches, clear data, etc., right? So those are some functions that exist in the Python sphere and have been documented on that object. We also have a type of object, and you can actually see it here, __doc__. If I print the x's _doc__. By the way, if you actually just type x dot, you know this list here of all the different functions, that's literally what this is, right? So that's all that helper is really doing. Doc is a nice little text object that someone's written into the class, and depending on who's writing it, it can be really useful information, and sometimes it can be really shit information. And in this case, this isn't that useful to me. It's just telling me data tree object, data I enumerable object, root, GH, path, data tree object, other. Like, it's just a bit, that's hard to understand, okay? But these are 3 useful things. Also, a nice other useful one is the type. Print type x. There. So we know that's a data tree object, right? Like, it's telling us what that is. And sometimes you might find, if things are fucking up, it's actually just because it's types not right. Last thing I want to see is if I write a equals x, so there's x and there's a, what that's doing is it's passing this object that's coming in straight to a. I want to see if I just use this data tree object thing, does it actually produce for me the outcome that I want? So if I hit that, yes, it does. Okay, so if I pass a data tree object from the import to the output, I get a data tree object. Cool. That's good. By the way, I'm learning this right now. This is all discoveries to me that I just haven't bothered to work out. Cool. Okay. So when I hit that dir function, you can see here there's like a flatten, graft, insert, item exists, merge structure. There's also it looks like a lot of all these functions that I'm used to using up in here kind of exist in Python as well. There's even branch count, branches. So let's just quickly do that. Let's go, I'm going to get rid of the doc. We don't need that, and I don't need type. But we're going to keep that dir function up just so that we've got that as a reference. So print x dot, let's go branch count. And that might be a function. So if you say, What's a nice simple function that we know of all the time? Length. So if I say print length, is it length or len? Len? Sorry, I do too much JavaScript coding as well. If I print len without with an argument, then that's going to print the result, right? So there's 4. We've got the same number of items. It actually ran. But if I print len without the argument, because the argument is effectively an instruction to Python to execute the function. If I just print len, then what Python will tell me is that that object is the built-in function len, right? So that it's either a function as an object, as a variable, or if it had the arguments, then it will run. So just be aware, if I typed x.branchCount and that happened to be needing an argument, it would tell me, like, for example, if I said x dot, let's say I'm going to assume insert is going to need an argument. X.insert, it's going to tell me, hey, built-in method insert of data tree object at blah 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 blah. So that's actually a function. It's not just something that will return a property of an object. But branch count does. Branch count is going to return that value 4. Cool. So we know there's 4 items in that list. I mean branch. Sorry. Let's just see what happens if we go branch. Okay, so branch is a built-in method. So if it's a built-in method, I should be able to give it arguments. Now, if I try and give it arguments, I'm kind of guessing at what those arguments are, other than the fact that if I type the helper, the IDE helper actually tells me. It tells me branch, data, tree, object, index, list, blah, 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 blah. So you see all that info? That is the exact same info that would happen if I said branch doc, right? See this info here? If I play that, that's the same info. Does that make sense? So that's all. When you've used Python before enough to know that this stuff comes up occasionally to try and help you out, it's getting it from a variable in the object type called underscore doc underscore, and you can get access to that if you want as well, if your software isn't giving you these hints for some reason, because sometimes it doesn't, right? Okay, now this is going to be the tricky bit. I'm trying to work out this bloody these arguments. Okay, see this argument here, self? That argument usually is referring to the value that is being written. So if I say x.branch or if I put a string and say hello dot join, please show me the join one. Whatever. Okay. That's what that self's referring to. It's the thing that's happening prior to the dot. So we're already inserting a variable into that argument. So the data tree object is x. Okay, that's what self is referring to. Then the second argument is the index, which needs to be an integer. So if I said go give me branch 3, or let's just do branch 0 and print that, it's actually working, right? It's giving me a list object with the items 0 and 1, which is this goober, right?
I think do something else.
Huh?
I don't know. I think this is like way too.
I want to keep doing this now because it's actually useful for me. But do you see do you see how what I'm doing? I'm kind of just running through and reading the information that's telling me. And there's the important thing is you're working with functions and arguments and using functions like directory or dir and doc and just printing things out and just breaking things down, right? So what I'd imagine is if I've got a list, let's just try this. New list equals, and I'm going to put in, this goes up to 7, right? So we'll go new list equals 8 and 9. I'll just see, can we insert it? And then we'll be done, right? Is that enough? Do you have other questions?
No,
We want to talk about other things?
No.
Huh?
No. Okay, maybe one, but that's it.
Okay, cool.
It's
Okay,
yours.
let me just do this one more exploration thing, but because I want to. Sorry. Print. So look here. There's a thing that says there's like a merge tree. There's a flatten. There's a where is it? It was insert. So if I said insert, print x dot insert. Insert wants a data tree object which is in self, so that we've already got that, and then it wants an object, some data, an object to put in, and it also wants the path, and the path object it wants is a Grasshopper path object, and then it wants an index, integer. This looks like it's going to be complicated. So see this Grasshopper path, that's an object type. You guys have used Python enough to know this. Hello. Yeah?
Looks familiar.
Let's just go pass. I can make an object. So like new ob equals a hello.
Yeah, just like.
Is this gonna work?
Yeah, just like subroutines.
No, these are classes that allow us to do like object-oriented classes. Okay, yeah, of course that's not gonna work. Did it actually run? Looks like it did. Okay. Sorry. So this is, I need to add more stuff to this object to make it, this class, to make it actually print its type properly. So its type's currently saying instance because that's the default instance for a class. But this is the hello class, just like the GH object is a GH object class. Classes are just, all they're doing is they're using complex relationships between all the simple building blocks of Python. So they're just variables with strings, integers, functions, lists, and dictionaries. So like if I said, hey, go get the branch, and let's actually make this a variable. So that this branch or list object is just a special class of the Grasshopper Python library And so I should be able to do things just like what we've done with the previous special type and be like b I should be able to create one, I think, in doing import Grasshopper Python. GHP dot component dot not sure. It's going to be in here somewhere. But yeah, we've just hit the complicated wall. The complicated wall. The complicated wall is something that I'm not going to get done between now and 4 o'clock. Because what I've got to do is start exploring. The thing that I just spent like 15 to 20 minutes doing, I'm going to have to do it for probably 4 or 5 other objects now, just to work out like all the intrinsic structure of this thing to then be able to build one myself.
How much do you like experiment with Grasshopper like this, like now, like usually?
Maybe once a month. Depending if I'm working on a job that I feel like there is a problem that can only be solved by experimenting, then I will work on it until the problem's solved. But then there are times where I'm like, I need to, like, I've got some time to experiment at the moment, and I know there's a job in the future that I might need, then I might dabble with it for a day. It all depends on my deadlines. So if we just get back to this, there is a way of solving the branch system without using branches. And it's the reason why I haven't really done trees in the past is because I've had ways to cheat. And the way to cheat is, so if we just cast our mind back to actually this particular script, this is appending to this list the value. We can also append to, we'll append data ob a, we'll make that b. Out of a, we can append the key. And we can actually append, we can do something to the key as well. We can actually replace new with nothing. So that way, so hold up. So we'll go keys to change, values to change. Key, value. So those are all the keys, and those are all the values, and they're not working. Why are they not working? Out of B. Cool, okay. So there's all the keys, and there's all the values. Now, the other thing is, we probably also want to do one other thing, but before we do that, we're also going to say, so we're in the data, we've hit that object, and we're going to say number of variable changes, number of news equals 0, right? We've just started with that object. And as we go through the key, if we find new in there, we're going to say, hey, number of news, add 1 to that. So when we've hit the end, like when we hit the end of that loop, I'm being too fast for you guys, but whatever. Sorry. When we hit the end of that loop, what's the matter? Name number of news is not defined. Yes, it is. It's there. Okay, cool. It's not erroring. So at the end of each of these loops, it's telling us, we can get rid of this now. There's one, there's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, there's 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1. Sorry to sound like a dog to any people from Asia. That's what dogs say, right? He knows. East Asia. So what we can do is we can actually do one more thing. We can do an out of C equals list, and we can then append out of C dot append number of news, and we can call this S for split. Now split, oops, need to run it. Split is a list of numbers that we can use to partition our keys. Right? And it's also the same partition that we can use to partition our values. And now the one thing this isn't doing is it's not it's not going to give us a really complicated data structure, but that's fine. We don't need it. But this is the thing, right? So we've got a bunch of rooms here, and we have a corresponding branch structure of the keys that we want to change. Right? Yeah, you can see that. So there's each one, and in some of them we don't want to change any key, so there's nothing, and there's nothing to change it to. And some of them we've got name, and some of them we've got tier. So we should be able to just do this. We should be able to plug that branch into there. We should be able to plug all of our keys in, and we'll be able to plug all of our values in. And we've now rewritten this code so that it will function on any new parameter. Did I just go way too fast? Okay. But does that make sense? So the reason we want it in trees is so that, look, I'm going to also do this. Hey, if bed is in bedroom, if there is a bed in the bedroom, also change the department, new department, to department, nice, to front of house, let's say. And that's going to pick up, ooh, that should work. So it's going to pick up that we want to change the department and the name, and it's putting that in that branch, that single branch. And the department is going to be changed to front of house, and the name is going to be changed to bedroom. And actually, let's go look at our Revit model to see if it's dead, because it usually is when you're writing these codes, because things change as you work. I think it was like this guy, right? Look, it's department's front of house. So when you're writing your CSS, if there's a parameter in Revit, then make sure that you just type in the exact name of the parameter and then put new underscore at the beginning. And if you follow through this system, then it will write it there. You don't have to write, like, we can now delete this and delete this. And we don't have to write any more code to make changes to Revit using that system. And I've just done part of your assignment.
So basically, we could use this again and again.
Yep. Look, what else do you want to change? Instead of the department, we want to add comments. Cool. No more code. The only thing we needed to change was the CSS. That's it. Now, there's a lot this could be, right? If you want to add stuff to the model, like add windows, then this needs to be able to not just put parameters on a room. It needs to be able to do other weird, wacky things. But that's potential for you guys, right? You've learnt my cheaty way of getting out of having to write trees. Also, if you get if you've got a really weird tree, or sorry, so you see this tree is coming out a certain way, this one, but for some reason we need it to come out with a much more advanced data structure, then you can use this unflattened tree. If you have two trees with the same length but a different code structure, like a address for each branch, then that will set that up. And let me demonstrate that. So if I graphed this, you can see comments and name. That then graphs comments and name. It matches this tree to match that tree. So that's if you do what I've just done there, get Python to spit out the lengths of the lists for your tree, and you can get Grasshopper to just build your tree for you if you need it. Cool. But by next week I'm probably going to have worked out how that Python tree stuff works. I want to know now. So back to this long arching, what we need by next week is start to fill this out with more information, better CSS, better analysis, and better outcomes for the script. Like, so there's a few pathways you can go down. You can make just better CSS. You can make your script better, like what we just did today. We just did two really cool things with our script today, right? We've done a contains, and we've done a writing parameters to the room, more and more parameters. So you're more than welcome to start adding more families to the model that control it better. And then there's also analyzing the rooms, so like you make more rooms. There are other things you can put into rooms that we're not necessarily measuring, right? So just explore. Yep.
So like, for instance, can we do like the rooms that are repeating? Can we make it? Well, I want to attempt like putting like a bed in or something.
Automatically putting a bed in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can try that.
That's what I want to. That's my goal. Is doing the hardest stuff. But and then like, can I also do like, if it was just like a custom rooms, like you said, with like a fire hydrant or whatever.
A fire hose reel.
Yeah, whatever that is, and then.
Do you want to know what it is? But no, keep going.
And then it would just pick up the room as, like a utility room, or like, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So just like, is that a good focus, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, there's a lot to go from here, and it's kind of giving you the opportunity to explore. For new guys, there's no wrong answer other than doing nothing. Doing nothing's the wrong answer. Going and exploring and playing with it is a really good answer. You're going to get rewarded for that. Okay? So if you just supply me with what we've done in class, that's basically grounds for a pass. The exploration is the stuff that gets you the part beyond that pass, right? I'm pretty generous, I think. I make the things really hard, and then I'm really generous with the marking. So you've got a week, and you've got Slack to harass me, okay? And you've got Slack to harass each other as well. Cool. Plus, I'm excited to see what you guys are going to do, because this stuff's really cool, and it's stuff that you could probably show other people and they'll think it's cool. So most of the stuff we do is like that, right? Do your parents actually, like, do you talk to your parents about what you do at uni? No?
Sometimes.
Whenever I explain anything about this degree, they're like,
What is
Yeah,
this?
what is this?
What are you studying?
What do
so
you,
I always say,
So hard to put into words.
you don't tell them the real,
because that means I have to explain it.
right? I'm doing computational design. What's that?
Exactly.
Okay. It's like a software engineering degree in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, and they're like, but what does that mean?
I say node-based modeling.
Oh yeah, but
They still don't know what it means. Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
some people, if you were to explain to them, hey, we're writing scripts that automatically like detects if a room should be a hotel bedroom or a toilet, and they'll be like, but wouldn't the software do that already? You know, like, wouldn't you want like that? Why does it matter that a room knows that it's a hotel bedroom and stuff like that? But it does matter, right? Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it's a weird one to explain. I usually just tell people I'm an architect.
That'll get you the
Pardon?
I'll get you
It doesn't. Oh, cool. It's usually people when they hear architect, they think you're designing like a house for a family out in the suburbs, and then they're like, so what type of architecture do you do? It's like, oh, I design stadiums and exhibition centers and civic districts and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, and that's the type of stuff you guys are going to be doing. Definitely. Cool.
I wanted to ask about, so like, I also wanted to try the windows.
Yep. Look,
Is that more...
before you do that,
Yeah.
have a go at, because at the moment all this CSS is doing is styling rooms. Try and make another system that is styling doors, right? Just have a go at styling a door and writing a CSS for the doors, because you have to start from scratch on doors, right? I haven't built anything for doing this on doors. You have to do the analysis on the door, and then you have to write the CSS. So that's a really good exercise before you get into the Windows, because I can tell you now the Windows is going to be a nightmare.
Yeah. No, that already sounds more like the doors is already there. For the windows, it's like you have to worry about placements, and, you know.
Well,
and that's the part where it's like, that's more Grasshopper related. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the first you have to identify whether a room needs a window. Then you have to identify which wall could have a window. Do you see where I'm going?
Yeah.
Then you have to place a window on the door, and the window is going to probably be defined by the room the window the window's attached to.
I'm already garbage at coding, so I might as well just stay there.
You guys are not garbage at coding.
I know I am.
But that's there's a stretch goal, okay? If you get your Kickstarter up to doing doors, then you can get started on the window one, and if you just have a go at it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but still submit it. Okay?
Wait, so with doors, what's kind of the approach there? So obviously you're doing like the toilet door, for instance. That would be like different to, you know.
Yeah, it would be.
But what parameters are we changing? Are we just
So what
filling in,
do
like,
you know?
more...
Just put like if you want, you can just, if you can't work out what parameter to change on the door, just chuck everything into comments.
Okay, but like it doesn't touch anything in Revit. Like
It will.
I mean, sorry. So if you go back to the properties on Revit, So
For the door?
obviously this class. Obviously you showed us class, so we can change all of these things here,
Yeah, why not?
and then we just need to type in. We can copy these like
And we can add stuff as well.
yeah.
You can
Yeah,
add
that's
parameters
what
if
I
you
was
want
thinking.
as
I was
well.
just thinking.
But if you can't work out, what parameter it goes into,
Yeah.
just add it to comments.
I mean, you can just open like another Revit file and play with.
Yeah,
a door,
there, yeah. You
and
can
then, okay, comments, yeah.
yeah, just add it to comments or. So look, you can see door closes. This is a Cox door, so it's been designed in a way
Sorry.
for. It's okay.
I've got an event from here.
Pardon?
I've got an event from here.
This event at 4.
Yeah.
Is it like a club or something?
Yeah.
And it goes for how long?
Check if it is this room.
It is this room. It's this room. You did it last week as well, right?
Yeah.
What? Because I don't want to be annoying,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to do it to you today.
Sure.
But I'd like to arrange a deal where we find you another room,
Sure.
so that I can push this class a little bit longer.
Alright.
But I'm gonna do it the proper way.
Yeah.
Through administration, but maybe just mention to this event.
Yeah.
That I'm trying to find you guys a room that doesn't clash.
Sure.
That's also nearby.
Yep.
So that everyone's happy.
Alright. Easy.
Cool.
Works for us. Branches set up in the background.
Go for it. No, we're gonna finish up because it is 4 o'clock. How would you go about it? Quick. So you need to do your analysis and build it into a dictionary.
Okay.
And then pass that dictionary into the CSS function, and then have your CSS.
Yeah.
And then apply your parameters.
I think
So you have to do your own analysis.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that'll be my main exploration.
Look, the most simple one here is where I've collected parameters. So if you follow that stream through, I'm using Control-Shift-Right here, by the way, guys. If you follow that stream through, all the way through, this part of the analysis is just getting parameters from Revit. It's just getting the name, the area, the tier, and the class.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm not gonna read over this.
Yeah.
I
Look,
haven't really. Yeah.
I'm already picking doors up, so to work out where the doors are connecting rooms, you might have to do like this script here is giving me the doors from room and to room. So you might have to use that to then also work out for the doors analysis, the from room and to room for the door, so that you can make a judgment about what happens to that door. Because, a door going into a bathroom or a toilet, you'll want that to have a privacy snib, for example. Cool. That's a really simple one. Actually, you obviously want a key card to get into the bedroom, into the actual unit. Yeah.
Actually, no, this doesn't really work.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, like, would it be better to download some door that could enable us to visualize more of these effects?
You do whatever you want. If you want to download your own door families, use your own door families. I don't care. Okay. I'm not judging you on the Revit BIM model. I'm judging you on the CSS and the code that got you there. Cool?
Yeah.
Okay. See you guys.